So Juan, thank you for joining me today here in COP in Dubai. It's a pleasure to see you once again. We've been catching up in all sorts of different locations in the world. I think I saw you last in Singapore and in Tokyo recently. So it's a big blue planet that we're on. Welcome to Dubai and to COP. I wanted to get maybe if we could start right at the beginning, get a little bit of background on you and EcoRegistry and the work that you guys are doing, and then I'd love to get some of your takes on what's happening here at COP, if we can. So over to you, a little bit of background if you can.
Perfect. Thank you, Rene, and always happy to see you and happy to be here in Dubai at the COP. So about the background and why we started EcoRegistry, it's very simple. We come from Colombia, and actually we started understanding that project developers in Colombia were having a hard day starting to create their projects. Just understanding the process for them was very difficult. Doing everything in English, opening an account, like having accounts overseas outside of Colombia was very difficult for them. So what we started is we tried to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. Actually, we saw the problem with the project developers, and we want actually to give them access to the market. But then we say, okay, that's the first barrier. Then what's the second barrier? Do they have traceability and enough information to support every single step until the issuance of each one of the carbon units? And then we started developing this platform that allows integrity in a way that the project developer uploads all the information, and then the platform goes step by step, seeking the approval or rejection or change requests from the validation and verification body, from the issuance body. In this case, for example, we started with Ser Carbono as the carbon standard that we were working with. Mm-hmm. So that process was clear, and then you have supporting evidence for each one of the carbon units. And afterwards, we said, okay, now we have the carbon unit. How do we connect these projects to the world? And then we started working, for example, with the connection to Expansive, to ACX, and to other exchanges that allows the carbon units to go internationally. And then it was amazing. The reception from the market was amazing because everybody wanted to work with us, independent of the country. And then we recognized that we have a very interesting focus in data-driven solutions, like having the right data to make informed decisions. Mm-hmm. And in that way, then we started saying, okay, let's try and move a little bit further in the way of digitized solutions for monitoring, reporting, and verification. And then we started partnering with other companies that could deliver the right measurements that would support the development of the PDD or the quantifications of the carbon emissions reductions. Mm-hmm. So that's actually, and then I land here in Dubai, and I see everybody wanting to go into data-driven solutions to increase and improve integrity in the market. And I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, and I think that's great that you touched on that. And I'm really glad that the market has essentially responded positively to that interconnectivity and your data-driven approach. In my previous role, I as head of global carbon markets at CBL, I had the pleasure of working with you and your team. And in terms of that integration to the expansive ecosystem, connecting to the registry portal, which is EMA, I have to say that it was the most impressive connection in terms of your technical expertise as your team. It was the fastest integration that I had ever experienced. And it's a testament to the technology and technologists that you have working at EcoRegistry. And then in further adulation, and just as kind of this is a compliment, so please take it in the right way, is I think that you have built the most sophisticated registry ecosystem. And I say that knowing full well that I'm a significant investor in Expansive and their registry systems at APX, but I'm so impressed. I have to give you the distinction, and it is credit where credit is due. EcoRegistry's registry not only is the first blockchain-enabled registry in the market, to my knowledge, it is also the only registry ecosystem that has two-factor authentication, right, already set in, and it's also the only registry that's connected to the next sort of data layer ecosystems, like, for example, the Climate Action Data Trust. Do you want to talk about this kind of overarching theme around essentially distributed ledger technology, blockchain, how it's utilized at your registry, and how it helps it differentiate you from your peers?
Thank you very much, and thanks for those highly words. I'm very excited to hear that from you, especially.
I mean it. It's not a hyperbole in any way.
So Yeah, and we chose that kind of technology for two reasons. One reason was that it was robust to maintain traceability between transactions, retirements, and the way you manage the blockchain. We use a private blockchain right now, but we could go anywhere, anytime public if we would like to.
Yep.
But we're using a private one just for security reasons. But the way that it manages, it allows the databases to maintain its integrity at all times. So
And why
nobody
is that?
can meddle
It's
with
because
that.
the immutability.
Exactly.
Great. Okay. So I just want you to stress that point. So nobody can mess with that data. The immutability is it's tantamount not only to transparency but to confidence. Because once it's on the chain, it's an entry, and now you have another entry, another entry. That is distinct from the other centralized databases that currently exist in financial markets, but also in carbon markets more broadly. And it's not a criticism, it's just that that's technology version 1.0, and you're coming now with essentially Web 3.0, effectively, right? So you're kind of leapfrogging, but it's really important. You want to talk about that immutability?
Yes, of course. And actually, we learned a lot from the process because working with a system that is immutable, it means that if you make a mistake, you cannot change it. You cannot take it back.
Yeah.
So actually, that was one of the first challenges, and that's why you need to understand the concept of the carbon market from the beginning very good.
Okay.
Because now when people start making transactions, they will make mistakes, but they will have full control of their own assets. And that's very important.
That's important.
But
Okay.
you can have a full traceability from each transaction, and I, as an administrator of the system, I cannot do anything about it. I cannot change anything. The only thing that I can see is I can see the trace of each one of the transactions, the wallets that were involved in those transactions. And I could ask somebody, if somebody, for example, makes a bad transaction and transfer the credits to another account, the only thing that I can do is that I can call the owner from that account and can you please be very kind and transfer them back? That's very important.
But I mean, that's
It gives you the power.
No, completely. I understand that, but I mean that's a fairly low risk, especially since you're connecting to exchanges. That mitigates counterparty and delivery risk. All of those things, and so effectively you have clearing. So it's essentially a human error that is always going to be pervasive in systems. But your system is immutable. It's blockchain enabled, and it's also scalable. I have to say, one of the things that I've really found as an experience, especially when we were doing the connection, is how quick and responsive the system is. I obviously have multiple clients that have set up on every registry in the marketplace, right? Across the APX registries, the Gold Standards registry, and on yours for the set Carbono units. And the speed and efficiency of that registry, and also of your team. Can I just commend your team as well? Because I've had instances where many clients have also commented how quick you and your teams were to respond to any issues. So compliments there as well. Do you want to just talk about kind of that nimbleness and that efficiency that you guys have? Because I think it's quite a unique proposition.
That's great, and thank you again for that, man, because one part is exactly, we only allow human error and we don't have administrative privileges to move everything, and that makes it very trustable. That's for one thing. For the other part, and why our team is so effective, is that our software developers, we do not consider them software developers, but they are very engaged in our purpose.
Sure.
They are very engaged in our purpose of the company. We want to change the world. In which way? We create opportunities for project developers, and we bring trust into the market so that buyers really trust those projects that are on our platform. So that's our focus.
Okay.
And our software developers are very focused on that strategy assessment. So that means that they will always try to follow more the market than the technology itself, because the technology at the end is just a tool.
Right, it's a tool, and it's always changing and evolving.
Exactly.
No, that's fair enough.
So I always say, I don't care if somebody copies our technology, because they cannot copy our way of moving fast, and changing and adapting constantly, being capable of adapting of the changes to the market, of the needs of Article 6. Article 6 haven't been signed yet, but our platform already has implemented some functionalities, but then when they have new ones, we will implement them very fast, because our software developers are also focused on Article 6. They don't just understand like the code, they also understand the market, and that's a very important difference.
I think it's a huge and important difference, and I want to stress that in this context, that nimbleness is the core and the lifeblood of any startup, right? It is what makes a startup, that energy, so vital and so instinctive in terms of evolving the business and how they compete and outcompete oftentimes much bigger incumbents, right? We see that in technology. When Google came around, right, as essentially, you had entrenched search engines, right, with Netscape, and they were more nimble and they had a better offering, and then they ended up winning and capturing the market share. So it's not different, right? And I could think of hundreds of other examples. But okay, so now I want to pivot to something that you just said. Okay, so you mentioned Article 6. We're at COP, and obviously that's a really important topic right now that's being discussed. One of the things around Article 6 that often gets forgotten about, and I think that you guys live and breathe this every day, is the infrastructure build, right? So not only are we talking about transactions between countries, right, and also fungibility for private sector actors, right, as it relates to either compliance systems or voluntary systems, whatever it may be, or buyers of correspondingly adjusted units. Those corresponding adjustments need to occur in a registry ecosystem. The countries need to implement a registry system at a national level. And then on top of that, those national registries need to be connected or interconnected with one another, either via a data layer like the CAD Trust or directly through nodes effectively. You're actively building out this ecosystem as you speak right now. So I don't want to get you off on the record essentially of any sort of commercially sensitive discussions, but effectively, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it would seem to me that EcoRegistry is not only developing registry systems for independent standards, like Ser Carbono and potentially others, but also at national levels for countries as it relates to helping to operationalize Article 6. Is that assumption correct?
Yes, of course. So right now we offer our services to Ser Carbono. It's the biggest standard that we work with, but we're also working with Carbon Path and Biochar Credit Standard.
Okay.
And we have also a demo and a whole platform focused on Article 6 implementation, mechanism registry, international registries, or country NDC achievement registries.
Great.
Stuff like that, and why we started in this direction. And that also answers one very important question that people ask me a lot. Why did we engage with the Climate Action Data Trust? Why did we engage with many solutions?
Okay, I'd love to hear that.
Because it's actually creating an ecosystem. We need to create an ecosystem. We need to open our doors to everybody so that everybody understands how our data model works, how we share information with each other, how we can make a robust ecosystem so that the technical infrastructure is there to enhance integrity and transparency in each one of the IDMO transactions or each one of the 6.4 ER transactions.
Yeah.
And actually, that's the key of the voluntary carbon market. People tend to say, we don't like the voluntary carbon market, but actually I always say the voluntary carbon market has given the knowledge so that the regulatory carbon market can exist in the future. The knowledge about how to implement different tools. In this case, we are talking about digital infrastructure that will boost the regulatory carbon market and will also allow the connection between very fragmented markets in different countries and will allow them to connect to each other and also have a connection to the voluntary carbon market. And I believe that creation of that ecosystem was the whole thinking behind the CAD Trust, and I fully support that idea of the CAD Trust. That's the reason why.
I want to just stress that point is so important around building an ecosystem, but what you said specifically around the innovation hub that has been the voluntary carbon markets, plural, and the infrastructure that they have built, the underlying registries, the improvement around methodologies, effectively the capacity building, right? All of these different things have been really, really important to helping to actually put carbon markets on the agenda. It is why there was a transition away from cap and trade type of allowance systems to now baseline and credit mechanisms. And that's what the Paris Agreement allows for, right? It's for leveraging the power of carbon markets through carbon crediting systems, right? And we're seeing that in actuality occur now in many countries as they're operationalizing their compliance system to meet their NDCs. So we both happen to live in countries with those types of policy examples. So I live in Singapore, and Singapore famously has launched a carbon tax with fungibility of carbon credits to a certain percentage. Colombia actually predates that model by a number of years, right? We're sitting in 2023 with Singapore systems already coming into place. Colombia launched in 2019, if I'm not correct.
In 2017.
2017,
actually.
sorry,
In
sorry,
2017,
stand
yeah.
corrected. So even earlier, and it served as a litmus test essentially for other countries to effectively follow. So do you want to talk about that component as well? I mean, let's take the thread that you just mentioned. Voluntary carbon markets serve as a hotbed for innovation, and now how they're affecting the policies at the compliance level, and then maybe give us your perspective in Colombia.
Very interesting. And let's talk about Colombia.
Let's talk about
I believe the best thing that happened when the carbon market started in 2017 was that, again, an ecosystem was built. But what was built was validation and verification bodies, project developers, project developers in the nature-based solutions, in the technology-based solutions, in any type of solution. There were also standards, registry platforms, brokers, like a whole ecosystem starting to grow around it, exchanges, exactly.
I worked hard on that one.
And a whole ecosystem starting to be built, and all the knowledge built up, and it also came through in a direction like everybody in their company had to have someone that knew and understood Article 6. So then it started to impregnate also the politics. It started to move into the regulatory market. It started to move in that direction, and that make also the country increase their level of capacity of really engaging in this type of regulatory. So the conversation inside Colombia got like very highly technical, were high technical discussions, and were very interesting, different than in other countries that did not have maybe the
knowledge and
the
capacity.
experience.
Yeah, the experience. But I think Colombia's, to their testament, there was a carbon diplomacy effectively, like a diplomatic kind of union here, where other countries sought out their advice. And then effectively now it's been implemented. I think Singapore is an obvious example that essentially said, hey, this is a domestic system that effectively captures at a taxational level. In Colombia's case, it's a fuel excise essentially, right? And in Singapore, it's broader coverage, right? But effectively, it's leveraging a tax. And then there's an optionality. In lieu of paying that tax, those liable entities can actually purchase carbon credits and submit them in lieu of paying that tax. And that duality is really fantastic because it creates a release valve effectively for that pressure to go. And interestingly, and I think this happened, I saw it happen in Colombia, is that it created a stimulatory effect in development of projects in the country. Colombia very intelligently moved from a sort of a global kind of allowing global offsets to be deliverable into the market, and then they switched it to a domestic focus with the specific approach or kind of intention, I should say, to stimulate the supply coming from their country domestically. And I think that was really interesting, and a lot of other countries have observed this. I would point to Indonesia, I would point to many others that are also taking that kind of playbook and now running with it, right? So that's another really interesting thing around the innovation piece that voluntary carbon markets have effectively unlocked for compliance systems and under Paris Agreement. Would you agree?
Yes, I fully agree. And the increase of capacity of and knowledge in the people in Colombia that moved actually. Now you have Mexico following the steps.
Yeah.
You have also other countries in Latin America, Chile also following those steps. And they reach out and they are also building now their ecosystem. So now we have a whole infrastructure of companies and institutions that need to have the knowledge and capacity. And then they also make it higher the conversation on their countries inside of them, like for the regulatory market. So I believe that's a win-win situation for everybody.
I think so too.